242,000 cars end up like this every year. 120,000 become obsolete, and 825,000 are changed annually in order to keep up with the Joneses. The British motor industry is made up of only a handful of names: British Leyland, Ford, Rootes and Vauxhall. Yet, in one way or another, it affects every member of this country. Week in, week out, except for high days, holidays and strikes, 900,000 employees in the motor industry produce a flow of 43,000 vehicles per week, supplying a public that is prepared to pay over £1,000 million a year to purchase their own transport, and are then prepared to spend a further £1,500 million on their upkeep. For the would-be buyer, saving the deposit for that new car may take some few months, and to purchase it only a matter of hours. But for the manufacturer to design, test and produce, it can take 5 years and a fortune gamble. This film concerns one such gamble. Of the 4 major firms producing new cars, we selected one, Standard Triumph, a subsidiary of British Leyland, and followed their quest for a new supercar, an expensive car, something they'd never before produced. A car capable of challenging and winning some of the market from the much admired and coveted cars of Europe. A project far easier dreamed of than done. For under the chrome and gloss of the supercar is the harsh reality of economics, management and planning. By June 1968 and commencement of filming, preparatory work on the new model had been going on for 2 years. Standard Triumph had already decided the main points: the price range, £1,500, and the engine size, 2.5 litres. Having decided to add another vehicle to their range and to the already badly congested roads, the next question to be answered was, what are the requirements wanted of a car in this price range by an ever-fickle public?
The image is very important. Finish and class.
Colour.
Elegance.
From a woman's point of view, shape.
Nice Alfa Romeo, you know, about 110.
Oh, I'd like one for speed, a Bentley.
Mercedes. Lamborghini.
Rolls Royce. 1800.
Oh, a sports car.
What car? I haven't got a car.
And so, in utter secrecy, Standard Triumph set about creating a new dream car. They assumed a release date to the public 1 year from now in June 1969. The project was codenamed Stag.
I'm George Turnbull, Chief Executive of Standard Triumph International, and this is our latest model. It's cardboard, sticking tape, plaster, all these things which go to disguise a model so that we don't show it to the public before it's ready.
Well, I'm Harry Webster, Chief Engineer and Director of now BMC, but until a few months ago of Standard Triumph. We all discussed together and felt that there was a need for, and certainly a big niche in the British market, for a car of this type.
We found that we had rather few competitors than we originally thought in that sector of the market. We had people like Mercedes-Benz and Ferrari and Alfa Romeo, people like that, Porsche maybe. But these cars tend to be very expensive, and we are now trying to give the same kind of specification that they will give, the same kind of performance at a much more attractive price.
Called in our stylist consultant, Giovanni Michelotti from Turin, and finally we sent out to him an old, very old actually, Triumph 2000 for him to convert into this particular car in which you're now riding, which was the very first prototype we made.
This is Oscar, and I am Arthur Ballard, Chief Body Engineer of Standard Triumph. And we're sitting in a wooden seating buck, which is dimensionally the same as the finished car. And we make this in order that we can position the controls, the pedals, the instruments, steering, and the change speed lever, ashtrays, door handles, and all these things. We then get all sorts and different sizes of people from all over the factory to come and sit in the car and judge whether we've got them in the best position. And if they criticise them, we then adjust them accordingly if we think it necessary.
We modified the interior of this car because it's rather on the small side. I suppose Italians are rather small people, and certainly Michelotti is a small man, and we think he rather underdid the interior, and I hope that Michelotti will modify this. When he gets it back, it's actually flying back tomorrow to him to carry out the modifications to the roof.
Some of the changes we've had to make for safety reasons have been the fitting of a rollover bar to suit the American regulations, which, by the way, is detachable. If people don't want to use it, they can take it off. We've had to shift the seat over 1.5 inches towards the centre line of the car, which has been a major redesign of the seat to suit a Swedish regulation. And the frontal grille has had to be changed. It was a sliding grille, and now it's a fixed grille. The headlamps were covered up originally, but we couldn't meet certain parts of the American regulations, so it was decided not to fit it.
The United States safety regulations are becoming more and more of a problem for us because they're continually changing, and of course, as the years go by, they're becoming more stringent. But I don't think that they have delayed us in any way in developing the Stag, because we can think sufficiently far ahead, I believe. We can make our plans to meet regulations which are just being formed.
We've been delayed quite a lot on this car due to the American regulations, and the production date has gone back at least 3 months. But we don't intend to release the car anyway until we think that everything is right.
There's always a gamble in this kind of project. We spend a lot of money on it, but we're very confident the car will be a huge success once it comes onto the market.
And so the 2.5-litre engine is tested, checked and retested in an attempt to reduce the odds of the gamble. And at the same time, in other factories, the body-shaping dies are being prepared. The molds that will give the new car its distinctive shape are being tested. They're not always successful. In the summer months of 1968, test is the key word. But the men who have to do it, have they any idea what the project is?
I've been working on Stag dies for about the last 18 months, 2 years.
We haven't seen all the drawings, but from the panels that we have seen, we get a rough idea of what the car will look like.
Well, to my knowledge, I think it'll be a good 6-seater.
Possibly 4, but I think more so it'll be a 2-seater job.
It will be a saloon car, a big family saloon car.
Well, I myself think it's a sports car, probably on the design of the Standard 2000 and the Rover 2000, completely slimmed down.
4-seater sports, fairly expensive car.
Oh, I think it will cost approximately 14 to 1500.
Well, I would say in around about £1,000 mark.
Between 15 and 1800, I would imagine.
Unless I win one, I don't expect I ever will be able to afford one.
I would say we do over the 100.
I would say in around about 100 or 110 top whack.
I think it's got to be a nice motor.
September 1968. An assembled but as yet still disguised Stag speeds around the track. The main checking points are braking, suspension, and most important of all for successful overseas sales, whether the new engine can develop enough power to challenge the Ferrari, Porsche and Mercedes.
My name's Sven King. Since 3 months ago, I've been Chief Engineer of Standard Triumph. I'm driving the Stag prototype here on a high-speed track belonging to MIRA, the Motor Industry Research Association. This organization is jointly paid for by all the motor industry in England and provides facilities like this so that we can test our cars in ways in which we couldn't conceivably do it on the public road.
I'm Harry Colley, development engineer with Standard Triumph. This track we're now approaching is the Belgian Pavé. We have to do at least 1,000 miles of this with each new prototype.
we started about a year ago doing the basic strength testing work. The beginning of the whole thing is to settle the parts of the car which affect long-term tooling. And longest-term tooling on a new mode car is in fact the body items because of the big press tools involved. And this car started being tested about a year ago, and these matters were settled by about November last year. We'll probably find that we go on testing continuously into the early stages of production because there are always small details that need sorting out.
This section has reverse cambers. Corrugations on a bend with a decreasing radius. Cat's eyes on a curve. Parallel tram lines. Another camber change coupled with manhole.
We've only got 2 cars available for testing at the moment, but shortly we'll have quite a lot more, fortunately, because we'll need them.
I'm Walter Robinson, Planning Director, Standard Triumph International.
November 1968, and the departmental heads meet for progress reports on the Stag.
Morning, gentlemen. Morning. Right. Stag. Now, last meeting, 3rd of October. We shall start getting finished bodies in white by mid-December. And then to examine the position for main production, which we must start June.
So while the management upstairs go through their secret schedules and checklists, the men down on the floor discuss rumour and counter-rumour and still officially know nothing of their company's future plans. As work goes on with the current range of models, they wait for the go-ahead of the new venture that could, if successful, ensure continuity of employment and fat paychecks.
Well, there's rumours that we got a new sports car coming on, you know. It's all a shush, you can't get to hear anything about it, you know. A fella knows this, a fella knows that. But it's going to be a real tip-top sports car, you know.
Ray, if you clear all your specs, do your tests and everything else, we shall be in time to meet the programme to give the information to Mr. Randall.
End of November. You will be able to start some work on them before the end of November.
Right.
I've heard it's got a V8 engine, 4 headlights at the front, you know, like a saloon. But I haven't seen anything, you know.
How about the castings for production?
The main dies would have been ready about now, but this latest modification on the handbrake cables, which is quite a big one, has put them back to the end of January.
So the main dies will be ready now, end of January. That means then we'll get what, samples in when?
Samples about second week of February.
Second week in February. Testing, February, March. Then there's your machining, Albert.
That shouldn't be any problem.
And once you've done your initial 25, no. Oh, well, they will meet the programme.
Oh, yes,
so long as we stick to the dates we've set.
Well, I've heard different dates, and I don't really know, you know. I mean, I've heard January, I've heard April, I've heard June, you know. You hear different things, and well, you don't know what to believe.
The main production casting samples promised mid-November. That now becomes January, you see.
Yep.
Well, we've heard a few rumours that there's 1 or 2 coming, you know. We've seen different models running around the factory, but you can't tell from when you see them what they are, you know. They're all bodged up, you see, when they're running around. Bits of sticking tape and things like that, so they can't be recognised.
Accelerator pedal, clutch and brake pedals, air conditioning, front and rear dampers, lower steering column shaft assembly, crankshaft, front and rear road springs, piston assembly, power-assisted steering pump, rear engine mounting rubbers, flywheel, handbrake and cable, jack shaft, rear subframe, timing radiator, petrol tank, cylinder head, steering column, road wheels, gasket, steering unit rack.
Well, I believe we've got another model coming down early next year, which I believe will be a V8 engine or something like that, I'm not quite sure.
Why it is June is that this model will be announced at the motor show. and there must be sufficient vehicles available for press release, for distributors and for agents by at least, let me see, September.
January 1969, and those hoped-for delivery dates were never met owing to various test problems and component strikes. Mr. Swindle, the new managing director, now has the problem of delivering Stag by the revised date of March 1969.
We are concerned, definitely, that the release date has gone back, but this has been inevitable, particularly due to the very high demand we've had for all our present range of cars during this year. And our capacity limitations have not allowed us to bring it forward as we would have liked. However, we can see it on our production lines towards the end of this year and for sale to the public early in the new year. And indeed, we are in the process of building the first cars at the moment.
Well, it's now June 1969, and this is the first pre-production Stag. The company originally anticipated that the first pre-production car, plus 24 others, would be available in February. However, after extensive testing, the board decided that there were various modifications that were required. This has put the program back 6 months.
Previously we had 2.5 litre engine. We had it in two forms. We had a carburetor form, we had a fuel injection form. And whilst we got sufficient horsepower out of the fuel injection form, this didn't satisfy the emission regulations for America, and we weren't really getting enough plain horsepower out of the carburetor version.
So our engineers got together and upgraded the engine from a 2.5 litre to a 3 litre. This, of course, affected our program greatly because we had to redesign parts of the engine, not only the engine, but also the gearbox. We had to strengthen the gearbox, and we had to change the rear axle.
We've all the time been very conscious of the safety aspects of this motor car, but we found that we could make it even better by connecting the rollover bar to the center of the screen, and this gave us a structural advantage as well, so we've done this.
Our seats originally used to pivot at the front. So once again, our engineers got their heads together and designed a new seat which now pivots from the rear so that it makes easy access to the back seat.
All these changes were enabled to come in because the dates went back, because we made the original decision to make the engine bigger.
July 1969.
Well, now we're in the car as it finally will be, and from now on any modifications that go through will be for major safety reasons. The car won't be changed for any other reason at all.
October 1969, Stag's debut, or is it?
This is Earls Court Motor Show, 1969. It was here that Stag was due to be announced to the public. However, due to problems that would have affected the production of our bread and butter motor cars, this was postponed. New models announced at the show were the 2.5 PI and 2000 Mark II. These have had their styling theme based largely on that to be used in Stag.
Once again, Stag's announcement is delayed, but foreign competitors still manage to deliver their models on time. What do they offer that Stag must compete with?
This is the Alfa Romeo 1750 GTV. The engine produces 132 brake horsepower gross, gives an acceleration of 0 to 50 in 6.8 seconds, and a top speed of 118 miles an hour. It sells in this country for £2,300, and its competitors are the Lotus 2+2, the Jaguar E-Type.
This is the Porsche 911S 2.2 litre, flat six, air-cooled coupe. So 200 brake horsepower, top speed 143 miles an hour. Price on the British market, including tax and duty, £5,200.
This is the Mercedes-Benz 280 SE Saloon. It is a full 5-seater car, has fuel injection, a most sophisticated suspension system, and has a selling price in the British market of just under £4,000. We have no opposition in the British market. I feel certain that in the fullness of time, the British manufacturers will produce a car within this price range, but at the moment we have a lead, and we have every intention of keeping it.
There's no reason why a British manufacturer, in theory, couldn't come up with a car as good as the Porsche. Of course, Porsche have already got 35 to 40 years head start on them.
We, of course, have the know-how, we have the racing experience, and therefore we are quite confident that we can remain very much competitive with whatever else the British manufacturers may produce in the future.
December 1969, and although there is still no finished car to sell, an advertising campaign must be mounted.
I'm John Chatham, the publicity manager for Standard Triumph. We're proposing to spend, I would think, about £20,000 on the initial launch, so I hope that I'm going to see something that we're really going to agree on today.
Now costing £2,000, how and to whom is a car like Stag to be sold?
We think the Stag is a very exciting car. It's obviously not a cheap car, but in this sense it helps us in the long-term objective of making Triumph appear to be a very exclusive company to producing cars which are, as it were, hand-built, or certainly thought about individually. So this car helps us in promoting the rest of the range, and in a sense is one of the most important parts of our advertising planning on it. We see the person who buys it as being certainly quite a well-off man, and not a middle-aged man, an early middle-aged man who probably even has a private income, but it's a car that people will aspire to. The schedule achievements are really quite impressive. Our main target in terms of the people likely to buy are A-class men, but our secondary target is to inform the motoring public in general. Okay, well, those are the charts, and I'll leave them there. I'd like to move on, John, and remind you first of what we said our objective was and our strategy for positioning the car. We are going to present it and take on the Europeans, and we're going to be very self-confident about the way we do present it. In particular, we're going to not advertise it, not photograph it, rather, in this country, but to photograph it in the south of France, possibly, in the Alps. We want to associate it with European scenes so that we can present our case as strongly as possible, that it does take on the well-known European cars. Forget the Alphas and the Mercs. Triumph leap in with the Stag. The copy goes on, John. The Continentals have had the glory and the power of the sportier saloons or saloonier sports cars all to themselves. With the entry of the Triumph Stag 2+2, that glory is due to fade.
I think that's fair. I like the ad. It certainly is direct, isn't it? It's provocative and it's going to attract attention. It says, in fact, exactly what we want to say, that it is competitive with, or comparable rather, with the Continentals. I don't think we should be too beastly about the Alphas and the Mercs in the copy, because they're good cars, and that's why we're sort of associating Stags with them. We don't want it to be knocking copy.
Yeah, we're not actually telling people not to buy them, we're just saying forget them. But the front cover, John, in order to establish the class and style of this car, is very simple. White with the title and name of the car almost embossed in white, in flat white against it, and a simple illustration concentrating on a section of the car and reflecting part, in this case, of probably that Cannes or Monte Carlo situation.
It's very tasteful, but is it a bit too discreet? You can hardly read that Stag thing on top. That's going to be embossed, is it, really?
Mm. I think we ought to put discreetly Triumph on the front of the cover.
No.
Well, right.
Yes. No, it's just a Triumph, isn't it? You know, why, you know, it's a Triumph brochure. It's not a poster, you know, it's some...
I'm not terribly taken with that particular treatment of the reflection in the window of the car. So much is going to depend on the photography.
And much is also going to depend on the models being ready. However, further snags have occurred, and by April 1970 in the Liverpool factory, the first 25 cars due for trial testing by the press in May are still not fully prepared. the main production line has not yet come into operation, and the rates of pay for this model have still to be negotiated with the unions.
It is, in fact, behind the original schedule, but only by a matter of months, and I'm quite certain that once we get the car rolling off the tracks, we shall quickly catch up and meet the demand.
There are only 2 months left before the national press campaign.
Never happy about progress. That's one of the crosses I have to bear, but let's say I'm reasonably satisfied. And the question of rates of pay will be negotiated between the company with the men's representatives and settled, as usual, in a satisfactory mutual arrangement.
We don't think we're too greedy about it, while we do want some say in the making of the profits in relation to the wages that we will earn.
Under normal circumstances, a man working building this motor car in Coventry will be earning in the order of £33 per week.
The procedure for piecework fixing in this factory is somewhat involved. We have a particular method ourselves that other gangs don't accept. We have a watch on the job and take it from there on the actual time involved, converted to average earnings and contingency allowance. With a particular reference to contingencies, you've got the engine drop, which is a problem in itself, and will therefore have a larger allowance in time than would normally be seen to be taken up by the men doing it because of the awkwardness of the operation.
The car chassis shipped from Liverpool to the motor assembly plant at Coventry finally receives its 3-litre engine.
We think it's a good car. We hope it's going to be a good price for us, obviously, and we hope that it will sell because it's part of the bread and butter for the men concerned and the future of the company.
Engine-wise, body-wise, and even, I should say, the performance will be very, very great.
Well, it's a pretty good car.
Well, I think it's the finest car that we've ever turned out here.
Can't afford one myself, but I'd like to have one myself. The best car we've made up to now, isn't it?
I'm quite certain our problem is going to be making enough, quickly enough.
Well, here we are in April 1970, just about 2 months away from the actual launch, a little bit too close for comfort now. We've completed our photographic session on the continent with Stag. They set off in March, and they set off in just about the worst possible weather with the news of avalanches all over Switzerland. And I really thought we were bidding the crew goodbye forever when they sailed away. They had difficulties initially in Switzerland, up in the Alpine villages. They then went on to safer and more pleasant weather in Italy, onto the Autostrada to get some high-speed, long-distance touring shots. And from there, they motored round to the south of France, to Monaco, Cannes, and places like that, which are almost the natural habitat for this motor car.
I am Lyndon Mills, and I am the sales director of Standard Triumphs.
Once a salesman sees a prototype of a new car, he's always madly keen to get hold of it. He thinks, this is the motor car I could sell now. I know just the sort of people who would buy it. Let's have the motor car. This one has taken a long time to develop. I don't think there have been strikes that have held the thing up. I mean, there have been small delays, perhaps, due to suppliers. It's more due to the fact that we have spent a lot of time developing this car as it came along. The manufacturer has to organize his selling, but the manufacturer doesn't sell direct. This is the reason why he appoints distributors all over the world. And it is the distributors who will do the selling. And what we are going to do in 6 weeks' time is to show this car to them, plus some other new models in Belgium. And from then on, they will give us an idea of the sort of quantities they will want. We work out at the factory in advance what we think the demand will be. In this case, we reckon the demand will be between 12 and 14,000 a year, total build for selling throughout the world. Whenever we're producing a new model, we have a code name as a matter of secrecy, really. and this name given to this model was Stag. Well, this gradually caught on. Everybody was talking about it as Stag, and the Americans were very keen on the name. We hoped to sell this car in large quantities in America, and they said Stag would be fine for them. You have to be very careful when you're picking a name for a car. There's always this big controversy in the factory whether it should be a name or a number. In my view, names are better. The public can remember them more easily. But you've got to be very, very careful because cars are sold all over the world. Unless you're careful, you can get a name which means something deplorable in Hindustani. In fact, there was a very famous manufacturer indeed who was just about to produce his new motor car, and he discovered that the name in German meant silver horse manure, and that wouldn't do any good at all, so they had to change the name rapidly. And these are the sort of pitfalls you've got to watch out for.
1 month to go, and all is not yet ready. Final stringent crash tests must be carried out.
The measurements which we take are decelerations of key points of the car, measurements of displacement of the steering column, and general observations as to the sort of deformations we receive in various key areas.
We've actually measured the movement of the top of the steering column as it moves backwards, and the movement in this case was just over 2 inches. Now the allowable movement is 5 inches. So the vehicle, from that point of view, is well within the tolerance. The only unsatisfactory result today, from our point of view, was the fact that the windscreen came dislodged on the test, and this means that we've got further development work to do to meet the American requirements.
May 1970, and from out of the wreck comes a safe, sleek model.
This is the Stag we shall actually be showing in Belgium. This is, in fact, one of the very first production cars, and here you can see it in its open form. Inside is an extremely luxuriously finished motor car. You can see that it is a 2+2 seater. There is definitely room in the back for 2 passengers, not for long distance journeys, but you can get 2 passengers in there comfortably.
May 1970, and the press is taken by chartered aeroplane to Belgium to try out in secret the new car. These are the men, the motoring correspondents of all the major nationals and motoring magazines who must, after the whining and dining, the flattery and the hard sell, write their reports on Standard Triumph's new achievement.
And finally, a 400-pound jump till we come to Stag, which of course is a completely new motor car, 8 cylinders, 3 litres, 120 miles an hour. This is a car that obviously is a very specialised type of market, something really pretty new for Triumph. We think it'll do a lot for the Triumph image, and in fact we think it'll do a lot for British Leyland. As an efficient sales director, I ought to tell you exactly what the market is. Quite honestly, I haven't the remotest idea what the market for this car is, but I think it will surprise everybody, and I know that in the first year our problem is going to be the difficulty of supplying enough of them.
What's your initial...
Questions and answers. The big sell is on.
First 12 months by the cylinder box.
I see.
Really, much more than an English car. It's more a European car, I think, than an English car.
It looks a true 2+2 for a
Yes, it is, a 2+2, yes.
Well, given date, we've got to make up our minds depending on how
Do you find it easier to cope with American standards with carburetors than with injection?
The sales talk goes on. Facts, figures, photographs, and every now and then, the difficult question.
Why is the battery so
Can you get anybody
inaccessible?
Test day, and the journalists have their first chance to try out the new Stag on the public highway. So, after years of development, the wraps are now off officially, and all Standard Triumph can do is sit back and wait for the criticism or the praise. Will it be all they hoped for? Is it indeed the car of the 70s?
very nice indeed. I think it's been made really to compete with the Mercedes. That's pretty hot competition to start rivaling them, but I think they've gone a long way towards it.
Keith Reed, motoring correspondent, Coventry Evening Telegraph, a journalist in a town very much interested in what the press thinks of their new creation.
I don't think that Triumph are going to have any difficulty in reaching their target figure of 10,000 a year production. In fact, I suspect that when the market really is discovered, they might have difficulty in producing enough. It could become a car much like the Jaguar XJ6 and be selling at a premium.
Well, I think it'll sell pretty well. Triumph are probably going to make the mistake that so many of our British manufacturers seem to make unavoidably or otherwise. They're going to get all the orders in and then can't fill them. This is one of the big troubles. I think there will be a big initial demand for a car like this.
I think we're probably going to be very surprised by the customer who buys this car. It's well priced. It appears immediately to represent good value for money. It's got all the hallmarks of the specialist car division of British Leyland. I think since the Mark II 2000s, this is very closely allied to that car. They really have shown that they are part of this division. All the careful thinking and the sort of innovations which really make you think that a car has been well designed from the first are here.
Well, now I've had an opportunity to drive this automatic Stag a bit more. The three things that really impress me about it, I think, are the get-up and go-ness of the engine, a real vervy, peppy sort of engine. The automatic gearbox, the unaccustomed smoothness, I think, almost of this automatic box. It really does work. It's really very nice indeed. And although I have tried the manual box, and I think possibly a lot of people would prefer it for this car, I certainly wouldn't ignore the automatic box. Third thing, the way the suspension sops up the shocks on the fairly bad roads we've had here in Belgium to drive it over. The battery is in the bonnet, rather tucked away. It's a job even to fill the battery, let alone to change it. I have a feeling it would be better off in the boot, although it would take a little bit of the boot room away. Well, this is the Stag then. Up to now, it represents about 5 years' work in a lot of people's lives. But the press have had a look at it. We've given our opinion. The dealers and distributors will give their opinion of it. They'll try to sell it. But in the end, the entire success of this car depends wholly on the customer.
On June the 9th, 1970, the Stag was released to the public. Their reaction, as yet, is unknown.
There's no reason why a British manufacturer, in theory, couldn't come out with a car as good.
Triumph will leave in with
the best car we've made for now.
Next I win one, I don't expect I ever will.
At the moment we have a lead, we have every intention of keeping it.
It's a pretty good car.
Obviously not a cheap car.
Our problem is going to be supplying enough of them.